It's your old mate DJ Paine here, and joining me, not to rap this time,
Yep.
but just to chill and
Yes, sir.
have a conversation, is the mighty Billz, Mr.
going
Billz,
on? What's going on?
representing Gold Coast.
Yes, sir.
My hometown,
Yes, sir.
your hometown.
Close to, may as well be.
Yeah.
It's home. It's home. It definitely is home.
We accept Coomera
It
as...
definitely is home.
But where were you born?
I was born in Auckland, New Zealand.
Okay. And how old were you when you came to Australia?
So I've only been in Australia for 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So formative years over there growing up as a kid?
Definitely.
In Auckland, South
Yep.
Auckland.
Yep.
Now, is it just me? I've only been to Auckland once.
Mm-hmm.
South Auckland's got a reputation.
Yes, very much so.
Bit of a,
It's probably like how, Mount Druitt's got a reputation. It's pretty much the same buzz. Like,
Yeah.
Well, Sydney has a reputation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? When people think of Australia, they'll always say like Sydney.
yes.
Yeah, and even like, especially for like gang culture and stuff like that, like South Auckland is the ghetto
Yeah.
of ghettos in New Zealand.
Is that why the family decided to come out to Australia?
To be honest, we moved here because my pastor moved here.
Oh, wow.
So my pastor moved to take over the church here.
You're talking about Destiny Church in Coomera?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So my pastor moved over here to start the church here. Well, to take over the church here, sorry. And then me and my wife moved over a year later.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's a interesting story all in itself.
Tell us.
Like I never wanted to live in Australia.
Yeah.
Right.
But we wanted you so much.
Yeah, God just made it happen. So what happened was, when I was a teenager, right, my parents were floating the idea around of moving to Australia. And they told me when I was like 16, 17, they're like, oh, we're thinking about moving to Australia. Like, if we move, would you come? And I said, no, I'm not going.
Wow.
Like, I will live anywhere.
Yeah.
With my friends, I'll couch surf, whatever. I'll move to my brother's house. Like,
What was the barrier? Growing up in Auckland, is like Australia considered a sellout? Is it considered?
I think it's just because I loved South Auckland so much.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You love where you're from,
Yeah,
so I didn't want to leave.
It's home, yeah.
And I just had no desire to be in Australia. Like, to me, there was no reason.
Yeah.
In 2010, we came here for a holiday, like to the Gold Coast, and I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like, this is me, and this place is cool as. Still no desire to ever move here.
No.
In 2014, my pastor said, oh, I'm moving to Australia. And instantly, every reason as to why I shouldn't move to Australia, it was like watching my life flash before my eyes. I feel like I would have, in my head, I feel like I was sitting there for like 10 minutes watching a film of why I shouldn't come to Australia, right? And then I like snapped out of it, and I just leaned over to my wife and I was like, we're moving to Australia.
Wow.
And that was it. And so, but the funnier thing, is that when I talked to my mum, I said, oh, Mum, because my parents were living in the South Island at the time, so I called my mum and I was like, oh, Mum, I've got something to tell you. And she was like, you're moving to Australia, eh? And I was like, because she knew that, our pastors were moving in that. So she was like, you're moving. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, that's so awesome.
Now,
like,
have they moved over?
Yeah, so my parents moved over in 2016, I want to say.
Yeah.
Yep. And my mom still lives with us. My dad passed away at the end of 2020.
Okay.
But yeah, so pretty much my whole family lives here except for my older brother. He's the kind of person that's like, if God wanted me to be in Australia, I would have been born there. Like, he's like, nah, man, this is where I'm at. This is where I'll stay.
So you've talked a lot about family,
Yep.
which is very common for, islander married people. Family is everything. Location is everything.
Yep.
Community is everything.
For sure.
You've talked a lot about the church.
Yeah.
And culturally, I know what it's like, over in the islands. Church can be everything, but then, Jesus and God in the place in your life, that might not be. That,
well, it's actually funny. Like, so my parents got saved when I was 8, right? Before that, we had obviously, like in New Zealand, that was probably my phone. In New Zealand, there's a religion called Ratana.
Okay.
And it's like a Māori religion. It's based like on biblical teachings and stuff like that. There was a prophet, his name was Ratana, and he started a church. He was a God-loving man. He healed people.
Wow.
In his church, there were like crutches and stuff like that got left there from when people were, healed and stuff. So that was a movement all in itself. But then, it became like a monumental thing where people, when he passed away, they more followed the man rather than continuing the move that God was doing. So I was born pretty much into that. My grandfather was an apostolo, which translates to apostle. And he was pretty much just one of the leaders of, the Ratana movement over there. Sorry, that's the what do you call it? Pākehā way of saying Ratana. Is Ratana. So very religious, very, church was when church was. Smoking outside, drinking afterwards. The lifestyle didn't match up to anything. And that's all we knew.
Wow.
Up to that point. When my parents got saved, when I was 8, I didn't know what.
Did they get saved outside of that movement?
Yeah, so when I was 3, we moved away from where all my family is from. So 3 years old is when we moved to like Auckland. I was born in Auckland because the town that we're from is not far from Auckland. So the hospital that I was born in, the birthing unit I was born in was in Auckland. My parents moved away from home to basically better their lives without God, no church, no Jesus or anything like that, just wanting to better themselves. And so when I was 8 years old, my parents walked into Destiny Church, got saved, their lives dramatically transformed.
Wow.
Honestly, this is the buzziest story. I don't know how much time we have, but so my dad, right, his name translates, like his name was Te Wehenga. In Māori, that means the separation. From the age of 8, my father's life changed from one path to a totally different path. And my mum and I often talk about it. And she says, growing up, when you guys were growing up, there are things that I thought me and your dad could have broken, like generational curses and stuff like that. And she said that she'd get really upset when we'd still have to struggle with the same issues, poverty, sexual perversion, all those kind of things, stuff that was rampant in our bloodline. But the amazing thing is that she also said, but in your kids, they see none of any of that stuff. You know what I mean? So for us, it was like the very real relationship with God and relationship with Christ. That was enough, like to see the transformation in my parents' lives was enough to me to know that God is real. My dad was the typical smoke. My dad would smoke 2 packets of cigarettes a day, easy.
Wow.
He gave up overnight. Just asked God, like said to God, look, if you're real, make me never ever want to smoke again. Next morning, never touch a cigarette for 20 years.
I love it.
The funny thing is, it's not funny, but it is because I know where my dad's at. Is my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer.
Oh no.
So
it all came back in the end.
It all came back in the end, and but the doctors would ask him, like, do you smoke and stuff? He goes, no, I haven't touched a cigarette for 20 years. So for me, it just goes to show, like, even with that, like, how important it is to make decisions now. Because in some way, shape, or form, they're going to affect you in the future. And like, even with my father passing away, like, that's the first time I had ever seen someone transition, like, right in front of me. You know what I mean?
From one place to the next.
From one place, and it was the most. It was sad because I miss my dad. But it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Like,
that's special.
It is. Honestly, I've never experienced anything like that, and it's hard to explain to people unless they've gone through it. Like, people always ask me, "Oh, like, what's it like, bro? Like, are you all good?" And I'm like, "Bro, I'm sweet because I know where my dad's at." I said, the thing that makes me miss him. I just miss him, that's all. And it's like someone living really, really far away and you can't see them for a really long time. And I said, that's honestly all it feels like.
How long ago did you say your father passed away?
The end of, like, December 31st, 2020.
Wow, so just recently. How old were you when it was only a couple of years ago?
I just turned 30.
Okay. So you had, obviously you and your father were really, really tight.
Yeah, well, my dad was, I could say my dad, besides my brother, my dad was my biggest example. My brother was always the person that I tried to get, approval of, My older brother was like the person whose opinion mattered the most to me. But in terms of like examples in that, my dad definitely, was the one. And even after him transitioning, even more so, I feel the responsibility to carry on that legacy that he laid for us. Like as a first generation Christian, like his name means the separation. He literally separated himself from what we were destined for. Yeah. It turned it around so that his future generations will see none of.
And I love that because, the biblical idea, the word holy, where the word holy comes from in the Bible is about being separate. Come out and be separate.
Set apart, for sure.
So is that holiness, legacy that you're carrying?
Honestly, it blows my mind. Like that whole, like I honestly feel like a really blessed man just to have gone through that and to even be able to share it with people, like I feel special that this is my story. Like
so the faith, you grew up with family, you grew up with faith, and again, not to play the stereotype, Islander people.
But I grew up in South Auckland.
Yeah. But the music is everything.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like you get a few Islanders together, you get anybody anywhere, next minute there's a guitar appears out of nowhere, for sure. And there's harmonies going off all 100%. Over the place. You obviously grew up in that. Where did the love of hip hop, where did the love of rhyming, where did that come into the place? And I'd love to hear what your father and the family thought about that as you went into that path. Yeah,
cool. That's awesome. So the first rap song I had ever learned was Thuggish Ruggish Bone by Bone Thugs and Harmony. For Christmas, my parents bought me a cassette tape, and it was like one of those now that's what I call music. Hits volume 20 or whatever.
Yeah. And they had a song on it.
It had Thuggish Ruggish Bone and Regulator and all this, and it had what was it? Nobody by Keith Sweat, and I'm like, I was like 6, bro. Like,
oh no,
you know what I mean? Like I was a little kid, and I'm like, nobody. Like, so, but yeah, Thuggish Ruggish Bone was the first rap song I learned.
Did your parents start second guessing that when their 6-year-old is rapping around the house?
To be honest, at the time, I don't think they paid much attention to it. Which is, it is what it is. But, like, the thing that really got me into rap music, though, was actually in church.
Wow.
So my children's church leader, when I was 9 years old, she said, we're doing some performances for church. Yeah. I want you guys to do a rap. And I was nervous as heck, but at 9 years old, I wrote my very first rhyme. You know what I mean? And
was it for church? It was a Christian rhyme.
Yeah. So it was like, so my whole foundation of everything was just like God raps. Like,
do you remember what it was? Put you on the spot.
To be honest, I only remember the first line because I thought it was like, at the time I was like, bro, I'm killing it.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, yes. It was like, hey everybody, I'm a Destiny kid. I want to have anointing like Jesus did. That was literally the first ever rhyme that I wrote.
I love it.
And that's what made me fall in love with hip hop. And so with that, when
you say, hang on, let me pull you up there, Billz. You said that's what made you fall in love with hip hop. Was it the feeling that you had when you came up with the line yourself?
Sorry, it was being on stage.
Or was it the performance?
It was the performance.
And people reacting to what you
Yeah. Like I felt so at home.
Yeah.
Like naturally I'm a shy person. You know what I mean? Maybe when I was first here, I wouldn't have, I didn't approach you and say, hey, bro, what's up? My name's Billz, rah, rah, rah.
I'm the one who goes, I do that.
See, and I'm the total opposite. Like, I'll sit there and wait for people to say hello to me. Like, just because for me, I'm like, it's, what do I say? Hey, man. Like, to me, it's just really uncomfortable. So naturally, I'm that kind of person. But, being on stage, I felt super comfortable. And I was like, man, I actually love this. And, so I'd do raps for kids' church every now and then. And it was fun. Like, I didn't feel like this specific calling or that God was saying, this is what you need to do with your life and rah, rah, rah. But the thing is that when I did come to the age where I was like, you know what? I want to be a rapper.
Yeah. How old were you? When you say what age? Young? How old?
I was like 13.
Wow.
When I knew, I was like, nah, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
So I would, every day at school, I'd be writing raps. And did you ever get, again, 13, then you go through being 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah.
And did you feel the pull to go, all right, I'm going to leave the Bible raps over here and the Jesus anointing over here, and I'll go.
You know what, bro? I feel like you're just telling my story. Like, well, it's funny, like, so at a young age, right? These are the specific words my father told me.
Wow.
Boy, like he would always say to me, boy, your purpose wrapped in skin, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
Ooh. Oh,
you know. And so growing
love it.
up, that was my I'm purpose. Like, you know, I have a purpose in life. There's a job for me to do here. So I knew that from a young age. And you know, as you said, when you go into your teen years, you tend to want to be cool and fit in with the in crowd, and you know. So I was kind of in but not in, because I'd be bad to a certain extent until I knew it was too bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I can't do that because my parents will kill me.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
So I remember one day at school, me and my friend, right? Both Christian dudes, grew up in church and stuff like that. One day at school, we just looked at each other and we were like, should we just start swearing? Like, we literally asked each other, like, are you keen to just start swearing? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, cool.
Mother effort.
Yeah, and we were like, yeah, nah, F that bird. Like, you know, just instantly, like, nah, F this, F that,
Yeah,
F this. And so, you know, there is that kind of,
Just to test it out. Just to say, okay.
well, but even there's that pulling, you know, like as a young person, you're being pulled by this, you're being pulled by that, because you know what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
So, as a teenager, I did really battle with the whole concept of, you know, I don't want to just rap about God. I want to rap about the same things that everyone else raps about, because to me that's cool, or because to me that's how people get famous and rich.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone that's rapping about God and they're rich and famous.
Yeah.
Like, you know, or the ones that do start like that, they turn. And so for me, that was a real pulling. And, you know, in most of my teen years, it was strictly gospel rap. Then I hit a certain age and I was like, you know what? I'll just rap. It won't be gospel rap. It won't be secular. I'm just going to rap.
Yeah.
So whatever I'm on, I'm just going to rap.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I've never cursed in my raps, ever.
Yeah.
That's just never been my thing.
You and your friend didn't look at each other and go, hey, what would happen if we started swearing in our rap?
Yeah. Well, it's because, and I think too, because for me, I knew the responsibility of carrying that.
Yep.
And professing those words.
Yep.
With people listening,
Yes.
you know,
Yep.
knowing that, you know, I'm accountable for the things that I say. So, in casual comments, I'm like, it's just Ricky. He won't mind if I'm swearing at him, you know. But, you know, but you learn things either by revelation or by situation. You know what I mean? And I'm very much a situation person. Like, God will tell, you know, say like, don't do this, or I'll see other people's example. I'm like, oh shucks, I shouldn't do that. But then when I get to that point, I'm like, it might end differently for me though. You know what I mean?
I would love to know what you revealed, or how much you let your father on and your parents on into that journey you were on, and how did your father speak into that?
So what do you call it? To my parents, I was a good kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a good kid. I wasn't naughty, but I hid a lot from my parents.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like, I've only been drunk twice in my life. I haven't done drugs. You know, so my record's pretty squeaky clean.
Yeah.
But I used to go out and tag.
Yes.
Like, I'd sneak out of the house and go do tags with my friends. And you know what I mean? So I was that kind of kid. Like, I wasn't naughty in the public, or like there, like that they could see. But, you know, behind the scenes, I was very much like that. And, you know, another thing that I did struggle with was girls.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So at a young age, I lost my virginity when I was 16. And I think that whole thing for my parents was a very tough situation.
So they were privy to all of that?
After the fact, they found out. You know what I mean? Because when you sin and you know something's wrong, the guilt and shame and stuff. So I told my youth leader, and he said, he's a very tricky man, but, you know, I'm thankful for it. So he said to me, he goes, you know, you got to tell your parents, eh? And I was like, I can't tell my parents. And he goes, I'll give you a week. And if you don't tell them, you know,
I'm going to do my job.
He was like, then I'm going to tell them. He goes, because I can't know what I know and not say anything to them. And I said, all right, sweet. You know, and because what happened was, when that happened, I went to his house and I stayed at his house for like 5 days because I didn't want to go home. You know, you think that every time your mum looks at you, she knows what you're doing, And so I was like, oh, well, I want to avoid that.
Yeah.
But I ended up telling him, and then when my mum picked me up, he goes, he said to her, oh, Billz has got something he needs to talk to you about. And then she was like, oh, okay, cool, lads. Like, thank you. And then I was like, oh, man. And like, hung my head and he looked at me and he goes, hey, your parents are leaders in the church.
Yeah.
They're cell group leaders. They oversee people.
Yeah.
And he goes, so the amount of grace that they have for other people when they,
Wise words,
have
man.
shortcomings and stuff like that. And he goes, so imagine the amount of grace that they have for you.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But you know what's funny?
Yeah.
Is that to my mom, she was like, no, you don't get grace. And she'd even admit it. Like she said it to me. She said at that point in time, she got really convicted because she realized that for us, there was no grace. But the reason there was none is because, and it's funny because you don't realize until you get older, is that they fought so hard to keep us away from certain things.
Yes.
So when I told my parents that I had lost my virginity, it was the first time I'd ever seen my dad break down and cry.
Ooh.
And, and it was like I failed cry.
Yeah.
And I felt that,
Did you feel that at the time? Or is that in hindsight, you looking back?
Nah, as soon as I saw it, I knew. I was just like, well, I felt like I failed because I failed,
But how much longer did you...
Did I realize that
he was crying because he felt he failed?
So I didn't realize until I was older. You know what I mean? When you're older and you make certain decisions and you understand the fight, then when people make certain... Because, see, me and my wife were the leaders of our youth ministry at church for a long time. And every time one of our young people would do something that is detrimental to their life, it would hurt like crazy. Yeah. And I'm like, bro, that's my little brother. Like, why is he doing this? And you always feel the need to save them or to try to do something to save them.
What did I do wrong? I failed them somehow.
Or how could I have avoided this? Or how could I have helped this, to not happen? And then I remember it getting to a point where I had a conversation with a group of them because they all decided, we'll just go and, do what young men do. Yeah. And so I sat down with them and I said, you know what? I said, at this point, what I've understood is that you guys are becoming men and I have to let you just make decisions for yourselves. I said, the reason it's hard for me is because I look at you guys like you're my little brothers. Yeah. And I want to protect you from the things that had a hold over my life for such a long time. Yeah. And I just said at that point, I said, but, I got to let you guys be men, and you got to make decisions. And
it's such a hard thing. Billz, we're running out of time.
No, it's all good, bro.
We could talk all day long here, man. I'm loving this.
Honestly,
what point did you go? You know what? I'm leaving the things of the world behind. I know I've got to bring your father's words back to you. I'm purpose wrapped in skin here. Yeah. When did you realize what your purpose was? What you were given these skills to do? Yeah. When did you say this is it?
Yeah. So it would have been 2013 would have been the year because I was, I got signed to a secular label in New Zealand. And at some point I realized that I couldn't come out under the same umbrella as the dudes that I was signed with. As much as I looked up to them because they're from the same city and stuff like that. So
can you mention who you were signed to?
So I was signed to a label called MTC, which is Move the Crowd. And they were a big label in like the mid 2000s in New Zealand.
So have they had on the record label who?
Young Sid, Tyree, Smash Proof, Ethical, Dirty Sesh, Surti. There were like lots of prominent, I guess, hip hop names at the time. But so I got signed with them, and then I went to a Lecrae concert. Funnily enough, And one thing. It wasn't so, I like Lecrae, so I went to go, I got to go see Lecrae. And I was watching, and it wasn't even so much the music or nothing like that. And I got so convicted. So I was like, I told my mate, I was like, bro, I have to leave for a bit. I walked out, man, and I was outside and I was sobbing, and I was like, man, Lord, what have I done? And it was once again one of those, you learn by situation. Yeah. Because I knew at a young age that's the path that I was supposed to take. Yeah. But I was like, I'm sure I could do it like this and it work out the same way, you know? Just for it to come full circle and for me to be like, damn, you know what? I'm not going to second guess you anymore. I'll just do what I know that I was born to do, And
how did two questions from that. Have you ever had a chance to tell Lecrae that story?
No, I haven't. I've never met Lecrae. Lecrae, if you ever see this, understand Your concert was the turning point for me in terms of the way that I wanted to shape my career. What I understood was that I didn't have to bend my convictions or rap a certain way for people to be fans of me or for me to be a popular rapper and stuff like that. So,
Second question, how did the record label take it when you came back to them and said, hey, this is...
well, to be honest, I feel like it was a God thing because it was like, they were just like, you know what, bro, that's cool.
Yeah.
All the best.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
We're still here. You know?
Wow.
And I had signed a contract and I said, like, do I have to pay anything to get out of it? Do I need? And they said, nah, it's cool. Like, you know, it's sweet.
Wow.
Do what you got to do.
So that's going back nearly 10 years now when you made that decision.
Yeah, it is.
What's next for you now?
So at the moment, my wife is super duper talented. I honestly, she's so gutted that she couldn't come this weekend, but she's super talented, and we're working on an EP at the moment.
Awesome.
Called Wedlock. Together, yeah.
Is she an MC as well?
Yeah, she MCs, she sings.
Oh,
honestly,
man.
my wife is uber talented. Like,
Man.
she's too talented.
Is that the first project that you've done together?
No, so we've done songs together. We both grew up in church. Like, I've known my wife since I was 11.
Okay.
You know, we weren't together since I was 11, but you know, we were together young, like 16, 17, and so yeah, super duper. She's mad talented. So we're working on an EP at the moment. We've done songs together. We've performed together. You know, it's what we do. It's like our thing.
Wow.
You know, so yeah, we're working on an EP, which will be our first project together. Like, you know, our first body of work. And then once that's done, I want to do a solo project, kind of as like a, you know, some homage to my dad.
Awesome.
Like what walks in the Father. And basically it'll just be about, you know, what walks in the Father is going to run in their children. So
if people want to support you, get behind you, you know, be encouraged, you know, encourage you and be encouraged by you, what's the best way to do it?
For sure. Jump on my Instagram, man. At Billz90. Like the letters, spell out 90. Well, don't spell out 90, spell out 9.
We'll have it up on the screen. 0. We'll have it up on the screen right now.
Yeah, right here. So at Billz90 on Instagram, or follow niche_creative, which is where a lot of our stuff will be launched from as well.
Oh, I got to hear more about that. Bro,
sure.
We got to go. We've run out of time. Such 100%. A blessing to get to know you over this weekend. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Billz.
My man.